Here we go. Well, welcome to the Fergus Falls Area Chamber of Commerce Meet the Candidates. Today, in this session, we're going to hear from the DFL candidate, Brittney Johnson, and the Republican candidate, Jordan Rasmusson, who are running for the Minnesota State House of Representatives right here in District 8A. The Chamber's mission is to serve as the lead advocate and resource for our members and create partnerships that foster a healthy business climate. We represent more than 360 chamber members, including for-profit businesses of all sizes, as well as nonprofit organizations. For more information about the Fergus Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, please visit our website at fergusfalls.com or follow us on Facebook. I'm Lisa Workman, the president of the Fergus Falls Area Chamber of Commerce, and I'll be your host today. Before we get started, I would like to thank each of the candidates for your willingness to serve the residents and businesses in our district. This is no easy task, and I commend you for stepping up to make things happen in the great state of Minnesota. I would also like to thank PEG Access, Layton Broadcasting, the Daily Journal, and Park Region for covering the event today. And I want to thank you all for being an active part of the political process. Today's forum will focus on issues that affect our local business community at the state level. We encourage everyone to vote on or before Tuesday, November 3rd. For our program, the Meet the Candidates, we will start with opening statements, followed by a question and answer session, and then we will have closing comments. Candidates will have up to 2 minutes to respond to each question. Our timekeeper will show the yellow flag when there are 30 seconds remaining, and the red flag will indicate 10 seconds remain. There will not be time for rebuttals. We will rotate the order in which the questions are answered to give everyone a fair shot. We will start the clock when you begin speaking. And if you need me to repeat a question, which I'll probably repeat them anyhow, but feel free to ask me to do so or ask for clarifying. We will conclude today by offering each candidate the opportunity to give closing comments. For this section of our forum, I would like to welcome our candidates who are running for the Minnesota House of Representatives District 8A, DFL candidate Brittney Johnson, and Republican candidate Jordan Rasmusson. We will begin with opening statements, and I'd like to give each candidate the opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us why you are running and what your #1 priority will be at the Capitol if elected. You will each have 2 minutes. Brittney Johnson, we'd like to start with you with an opening statement.
Great. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you to the Fergus Falls Chamber of Commerce for hosting this today, and all of your partners for carrying it. So yeah, my name is Brittney Johnson. I'm a candidate for the Minnesota House of Representatives in District 8A, and I live in Underwood, Minnesota. So I attended the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities, where I got my degree in agronomy. And then I came up here and I started working at the East Otter Tail Soil and Water Conservation District in Perham, Minnesota. So I worked as an irrigation technician, helping farmers manage their soil moisture. And then while I was there, I bought my farm. So now I raise about 20 head of sheep just outside of Underwood for mainly meat and wool. And then most recently, I made the move to manufacturing. So now I work in a corn mill in Wahpeton, North Dakota, making the ingredients that go into dairy cow feed and dog food. So it's really great. But I'm here today because I believe that the people of Otter Tail County deserve responsive and effective government. And that would be my top priority as your legislator. I think that the state legislature has to deal with a lot of different issues, and they have to be prepared to deal with those issues quickly. And I think we've seen that with the COVID epidemic. I think we've also seen it with the bonding bill that was passed this year. That was very late compared to normal. And I think we need to see it with some of the systemic issues we're seeing, specifically around healthcare. This has been a problem for a while, and I think it's just lack of political will that has prevented us from addressing it. And so I am excited to be here and to answer your questions, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much, Brittney. All right, Jordan, if you would mind introducing yourself and telling us what your #1 priority will be at the Capitol if elected.
Both as a chamber member and a candidate, thank you, Lisa, and thank you to the chamber for hosting this forum. Also, thank you to Brittney for participating as well. As many of you know, Representative Bud Nornis who has served this community for the last 24 years in the legislature, is retiring. I'm honored to have Bud's endorsement and also to be the Republican Party's endorsed candidate. As the sixth generation of my family to live here in Otter Tail County, I am immensely grateful to be a part of a community that still believes in the importance of faith, family, hard work, and integrity. I'm running for state representative to fight for our Otter Tail County values and priorities at the state capitol. Minnesota families and businesses have been devastated by COVID-19 and the resulting shutdown of our state economy. Our next state representative is going to have to make tough decisions on how to jumpstart Minnesota's economic recovery and balance our state budget deficit. I will put my experience as a business consultant and financial analyst to work for you. We need to make sure that every tax dollar is spent wisely, and we must resist the Democrats' calls to increase Minnesota's taxes, already among the highest in the nation. Minnesotans also deserve to feel safe in their communities. I will support law enforcement and oppose radical efforts to defund the police. As someone with a grandmother who lives here in the district, I know our aging loved ones have gone through many challenges over this past year. I will make sure to fund nursing homes adequately and ensure that our seniors get the care that they deserve right here in Otter Tail County. On these and other issues, education, transportation, agriculture, I'm ready to lead. I'm Jordan Rasmusson, and I'm asking for your vote for state representative. With your support, I'll work to ensure that Otter Tail County and Minnesota remain the land of opportunity that attracted my ancestors 150 years ago.
Thank you, Jordan. So we'll begin now with the question and answer session, and we will rotate back and forth as to who gets to answer. And we will start question number one with Jordan. So Jordan, in your opening statement, you said that bringing Otter Tail County values to the Capitol would be your number one priority. You can either clarify on that or elaborate, or tell us what your other top two issues that would be that you debated putting in the number one spot.
Thanks for the question, Lisa. For me, it comes back to making sure that our way of life out here in greater Minnesota and that the values that we hold dear can get passed on to another generation. I just got married here this last month to my high school sweetheart, Emma, and we're looking to raise our family here. And so for me, it's about making sure that Fergus Falls, Otter Tail County, and the state of Minnesota is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. One of the critical issues to making sure that that happens is getting our economy back on track. And as I talked about, we're going to be facing one of the largest budget deficits in state history. And I think we have to make sure that we don't increase taxes at this time and put an undue burden on the families and small businesses who have already sacrificed so much as a part of this pandemic. And so I will work to identify and eliminate wasteful, ineffective programs and make sure that Minnesota's tax dollars are spent wisely, because that's going to help us recover and get back on track and make sure that there's opportunities here for the next generation.
Thank you, Jordan. And Brittney, we'll turn the same question to you in your opening statement. You talked about having a responsive and efficient government being your number one priority. Ask you to either clarify or expand on that, or tell us what other would be the top two issues that you would consider putting in that number one priority position.
Yeah, so a responsive and effective government was really important to me personally growing up. My family didn't have everything. And so my public school was really the way that I had the opportunities to get to where I am today. And so making sure that we're funding our public education system is really important to me. Also getting my degree was really important in agronomy. That allowed me to get my first job. And so supporting young kids and careers like that are really important. And I think that moving forward, some of the challenges we're facing now around kind of stagnant wages and, healthcare affordability, I think that those are really important priorities that the state legislature needs to look at. I believe that the state legislature should focus on supporting the middle class. And so making sure that healthcare prices are transparent is important. Making sure that premiums are affordable is important. And making sure that the families that live in rural Minnesota have the access they need to healthcare is really important. And, out here, our jobs are what sustain us, right? They're how we make our paychecks, they're how we pay for our farms. And making sure that we have those good jobs available is going to be a top priority. I think there are a lot of great ways the state can do that by supporting agricultural innovation, by supporting the manufacturing industry, and by making sure that the natural resources that Otter Tail County has can continue to support our way of life. And so those are some of my top priorities down at the state legislature in St. Paul.
Well, thank you, Brittney, for that. Our question number 2, Brittney, you'll get to answer this one first. So our question number 2 focuses on the state's budget and taxes. Minnesota is facing a potentially steep budget deficit heading into the next session. Balancing the state's budget will be one of your top priorities. What would your main approach be to addressing this deficit? Increasing revenue and taxes, or reducing spending and cutting programs? And if you support increasing revenue through tax increases, what taxes should be increased, and on what or on whom? And if your approach is reducing spending, what areas or programs would you cut? We'll start with you, Brittney, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Great. So yeah, my first priority is limiting the extent of the damage that we're going to be facing with our budget deficit. And I think the best way to do that is to make sure that businesses can operate safely right now. I think another shutdown would be devastating. And so I think we need to do whatever we can as a state to prevent that from happening. So prioritizing, our businesses and then the hospital systems that serve our community is going to be the first thing we should do. Regarding your question of revenue versus cuts, I think, again, it's going to be a combination of the two of those things. I think that there are some taxes that were repealed that we could take a look at, and that includes the estate tax on estates over $2 million or $3 million. And then we also saw the cigarette tax get lowered in the last couple of sessions. And so those aren't huge amounts of money, but if I had to choose between, reinstating those taxes or, cutting our school lunch program, I'd probably pick to reinstate those programs. I also think that we're going to need to look at cuts. The $5 billion projected deficit is about 10% of Minnesota's annual budget or biennial budget. And so looking at those, looking at what cuts we can make at departments is going to be important. So I know Governor Walz has asked each of his departments to make 10 to 15% lower projected department budgets. And I support something like that. And I also think that we're just going to need to tighten our belts and see what we can do with some of these other programs for the time being. I also just want to make a note that some of us we have not been equally impacted by the pandemic, right? Some businesses are carrying on or even doing better than they were before, and some have been completely shut down. And so I think that it's going to be really important to make sure we don't leave people behind. I think that we each have a part to play in stepping up and making sure our local food shelves and our local shelters are funded. And so I would encourage all of us to do what we can personally to limit the damage that this pandemic has done.
Thank you, Brittney. Jordan, we'll turn the same question over to you, that Minnesota is facing a potentially steep budget deficit heading into next session. I think it's guaranteed. Balancing the state budget will be a top priority. What would your main approach be to addressing the deficit, increasing revenue and taxes, or reducing spending and cutting programs? If you support increasing revenue through tax increases, what taxes should be increased, on what or on whom? And if your approach is reducing spending, what areas or programs would you cut?
Thank you for the question, Lisa. And I do think that solving our budget deficit is going to be the biggest challenge of the next legislative session. And I think that Minnesotans deserve to have their tax dollars spent wisely. And I think that raising taxes during this time would slow our economic recovery and put an undue burden on the families and small businesses who have already sacrificed so much as a part of this pandemic. And so for me, I would focus on looking at a top to bottom review of our state budget and cutting ineffective programs that aren't efficient, and making sure that state government shares in the sacrifices that families and businesses have been making. A couple of concrete areas where I think we need to look. The first would be the Department of Human Services. There have been numerous stories over the past year or more of fraud, waste, and abuse that is not respectful of taxpayer dollars. Secondly, we need to look at how the state of Minnesota can embrace technology to get efficiencies. We've seen everything from MNsure to other state technology investments really end up causing more inefficiencies and more costs. That's something we need to get a handle on as a state to make sure that we're taking advantage of technology out there for government. And then the last piece we need to look at is the budget projections actually assume increases in spending driven by inflation. And I think we need to go across all those cost categories, and instead of assuming that they need to go up year after year, look at if they can tighten their belt as Minnesotans have so that we can get through this without raising taxes. I think, Minnesota is already one of the top tax states in the country, and especially here in Otter Tail County, we feel the pressures from North Dakota and South Dakota. And if we raise our taxes again, I fear that we'll lose businesses, we'll lose families over to North Dakota and potentially South Dakota, just given where our tax rates are currently.
Thank you, Jordan. Well, we're going to continue on the budget theme, and this time we're going to talk about healthcare. We're on question number 3, and so Jordan, you will have the opportunity to answer this question first. Governor Walz has proposed a public health care buy-in option for any Minnesotan, regardless of income level. The startup costs are more than $150 million. At a time when we are facing a budget shortfall, how should this cost be funded?
Thank you for the question, Lisa. And for me, I oppose Governor Walz's proposal. I think, when I look at the cost of healthcare, it is a struggle for families and small businesses. I actually had an opportunity to talk with a family while campaigning that was thinking about going and starting their own small business. And they said the number one barrier for them was the cost of healthcare and knowing that they could find affordable healthcare as a family. And so making sure that healthcare is affordable is a key concern of mine. I'm honored to be endorsed by Minnesotans for affordable health insurance because they've recognized that I will stand up for Minnesotans with pre-existing conditions and also work to reduce the cost of healthcare here in Minnesota. I'm opposed to a government takeover of healthcare because I don't think they'll do a very good job. And when I talk to local hospital administrators here in Fergus Falls, in Perham, they say that they cannot operate on the rates that the government programs offer, which could threaten to shut down healthcare providers here in our community and force people to have to go to Fargo-Moorhead or the Twin Cities to receive care. So I think it's the wrong plan. And instead we should focus on eliminating the sick tax, looking at burdensome rules and regulations that drive up costs, empowering patients and consumers with price transparency so that they can shop and make the best decisions for their family. We can't give more control to government to fix healthcare because they have shown that they have been ineffective in the past at reducing the cost of it.
Thank you, Jordan. Brittney, we'll give you the same question. Governor Walz has proposed a public healthcare buy-in option for any Minnesotan, regardless of income. The startup costs are more than $150 million. At a time when we are facing a budget shortfall, how should this cost be funded?
Yeah, okay, great question. So I agree. When I look at switching to farming full time, my biggest barrier is health insurance costs, right? I figure, well, if I pay off my farm, then I can quit, but I can't because then my health insurance premiums are just going to be just as expensive as my mortgage, which is crazy. So here's my concern about health insurance and healthcare specifically as it relates to rural communities. There are economies of scale in any type of service, and we just don't have the number of people out here to support that. So I get very concerned when people suggest that that the free market is going to be the answer to our problems, because I fear that will result in rural Minnesotans not getting the care that they need. So I think we need to keep that in mind. The people who live out here are really important people. We do important work and we deserve to have high quality, affordable, accessible healthcare. And so 95% of Minnesotans currently have insurance coverage. So that's a combination of private insurance and public insurance like Medicare and Medicaid. And it is important to note that the reimbursement rates are not always as high as they need to be. And so out here, our private insurance is what helps keep our rural clinics and our rural hospitals operating. And so there has been federal legislation to increase those reimbursement rates for critical access hospitals. I support that. Obviously, I'm running for a state position. As far as funding the $150 million startup cost that you mentioned, I think that if we are going to have a Minnesota Care buy-in, it's going to need to work out with the actuaries, right? We're going to need to be able to pay for it with premiums. Those premiums are going to be high, but I think that state reimbursements based on income are going to be important. I also think that there's going to be savings for businesses. Most businesses don't want to be responsible for their employees' healthcare. It takes up a lot of time and it can be really expensive. And so I think that that's another opportunity that businesses have to free up their resources.
That's a great segue. Brittney, thank you for that answer. Sticking with the healthcare theme, we're going to move on to question number 4. And Brittney, you'll have the opportunity to answer this question. In 2019, a survey to our chamber members, more than 1/3 of our members stated that the rising cost of healthcare coverage was one of their biggest concerns. Healthcare costs are expected to continue to climb. How would you recommend addressing the rising healthcare costs being faced by our local employers?
Yeah, so I think kind of building off what I've just said, I think that increasing price transparency is going to be really important. And if we want to treat healthcare like a free market, like capitalism, right? We have one of the important parts of that is making sure we have price transparency, making sure that people know what it's going to cost to go to the doctor before they go, making sure that, hospitals understand that they are going to get reimbursed at fair rates, and making sure that prescription drugs are affordable. I would support something that like the Alex Smith Insulin Affordability Act that made sure that life-saving medications are not too expensive for people to afford. So that includes insulin, that includes things like EpiPens. I think that we can do that. I also think that there's a really important part of the Affordable Care Act that impacts us here, and that's the 80-20 rule. So that rule says that insurers have to spend at least 80% of their premiums on healthcare. With the threat of having that law repealed, I think the state needs to look at maintaining that. So anything, if your insurance company doesn't pay that, they have to refund you the difference. So I think over $1.7 billion was refunded in 2019. So we need to maintain that. And I just think that this is going to be a tough issue that we might have to try a few things. And I think we should be willing to do that. So, yeah.
Great, thanks, Brittney. Jordan, we'll ask you the same question. In 2019, in a survey of our chamber members, more than 1/3 of our members stated that the rising cost of healthcare coverage was one of their biggest concerns. Healthcare costs are expected to continue to climb. How would you recommend addressing the rising healthcare costs being faced by our local employers?
Lisa, I'm not surprised to hear that that the rising cost of healthcare is a big issue for your members, because I hear it as I've been talking to small business owners, large business owners across Otter Tail County. And I think it is an impediment to growth here in the state of Minnesota, that businesses don't know how the cost of healthcare is going to change year over year. And so that makes them slow to hire, and it makes them think twice about expanding. So it is going to be a top priority for me down at the legislature to make sure that Minnesotans, small businesses, have access to affordable health insurance. For me, it comes down to a couple concrete policies that I'm committed to working on. One is that we have to eliminate the sick tax here in Minnesota. We're unique that we have a tax on healthcare providers that drives up the cost of care and taxes people for being sick. We need to work to reduce and potentially eliminate that tax. Number 2, we as a state place additional regulations and burdens on our healthcare providers above and beyond what the federal government requires. I think we need to take a close look at the costs of a lot of those regulations and ensure that they make sense for Minnesota patients and consumers and healthcare providers. Number 3, we need to promote price transparency. As I said earlier, we need to allow patients to be empowered to know what the costs are, especially as deductibles have gone up. That's an important part of our healthcare economics. And so we need to focus on price transparency. Lastly, I think telehealth provides a great opportunity, especially here in rural Minnesota, to provide greater access, especially in needed specialties at potentially lower costs. It has to be done correctly. We have to have the right policy, but I think that that can be something that drives down healthcare costs as well. The last thing I'll say is I just don't think that handing more and more control, more and more dollars to the state government is going to be the answer. And I think small business owners will face even higher costs if that is the policy that we pursue.
Thank you, Jordan. Well, we're going to move on to question number 5, and we're going to look at the environment. Jordan, you'll have the opportunity to answer this question first. Do you think the regulatory system in Minnesota, specifically environmental permitting and environmental review, should be streamlined and become more efficient, or should standards be increased?
That's a really important question, Lisa. And as a Eagle Scout, I care a lot and was raised to believe that we're all to be stewards of our natural resources. And that's really important to the people here in Otter Tail County. We care about our water, we care about the air, we care about the land, and we want to protect those resources. All that being said, Minnesota's environmental regulatory framework is eliminating jobs and preventing growth that could be critical to helping Minnesota get our economy back on track. One example of this is the Line 3 project. Here they're looking at replacing an existing pipeline with newer, safer technology. It would result in thousands of good paying jobs. It actually even has a local impact on some suppliers here in Otter Tail County. And we've seen the Twin Cities Democrats and the radical environmentalists delay it time and time again. And so I do think we need to look at our environmental rules and regulations, streamline them, make sure that we're protecting our water quality, air quality, and protecting the environment, but doing so in a way where we're giving feedback to business owners, investors that are looking to make investments, and make sure that once a project has cleared environmental hurdles, such as Line 3, that they're able to move forward and put Minnesotans to work.
Thank you, Jordan. Brittney, we'll give you the same question. Do you think the regulatory system in Minnesota, specifically environmental permitting and environmental review, should be streamlined and become more efficient, or should the standards be increased?
Yeah, so again, this is a really important question. We have a lot of people in our community who really care about this, and we're really lucky to live here in a place where we do have clean air and clean water. And so for me, one of the reasons I became a farmer is because I believe it is up to every single one of us to do our part, right? So for me, instead of trying to tell someone else what to do, I think it's really important that I do that work. And so I think that, again, each and every one of us need to do what we can to make sure that we're handing over a safe place to live for our children. Here in Otter Tail County, a very large percentage of our property tax base is actually a result of our natural resources, right? We have so many people who visit here in the summer or who own a cabin on a lake in the summer. And so I wouldn't do anything to jeopardize that. I think that Minnesota invests in its natural resources. I think that we need to continue doing that. I think our environment and our clean natural resources bring us jobs already. And so I think that we need to protect those jobs that we already have. I think that the environmental review process is important. And I think that some of the questions that get asked in that process are also really important. Like, do we have alternatives? Is there another way we could do this? And if it makes sense, let's do it. So I think that that's what that process does. And I'm open to ideas that would streamline that process, make it more effective, or that would have better outcomes for our environment. And so I think I would just have to look at each and every one of those on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Brittney. Well, our final question before our closing comments is twofold. And Brittney, you'll have the opportunity to answer this question first. So our question is do you consider yourself a pro-business candidate? And if so, why? And how would you represent the business community of District 8A at the state capitol if elected?
That's a great question. Do I consider myself a pro-business candidate? I consider myself a pro-people candidate, and businesses are run by people and they serve people. So yeah, I think that that's really, our businesses are really important. They are how we help, they're how we address problems in our community. And that's how a lot of businesses get started. Somebody sees a need and they fill it. So for me, I'm a sheep farmer. And so almost 70 to 80% of lamb in the United States is imported from other countries. So I saw that and I was like, hey, that's a great opportunity to, provide a local product. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm doing that. I think that the types of businesses that we have are very, very wide ranging. And so their needs are going to be different. But I think what's really important about a legislator is that they listen to the owners of those businesses and the employees of those businesses to help understand the challenges they're facing, and also to recognize their contributions to our community. We have a lot of amazing businesses, not only in Fergus Falls, but, across Otter Tail County that make our community a great place to live. And so, I support all those people. I support, people like me who are just starting, and the people who have been around forever doing that work. I was just on the phone with somebody who lays Ethernet cable lines. And they're like, oh yeah, I actually my business helped lay the line out to where you're working now. And so it's like all an interconnected web of how we're serving each other and helping to address our needs. And so, yeah, I would consider myself a pro people and therefore pro business candidate.
Well, thank you, Brittney. Jordan, we'll have you answer the same question. Do you consider yourself a pro business candidate? And if so, why? And how would you represent the business community of District 8A at the state capitol if you were elected?
Thank you for the question, Lisa. And yes, I consider myself a pro-business candidate. I think that I have an appreciation for the tough decisions and the hard work that small business owners and operators, employees have to make every day to make sure that our economy functions, that they're able to meet payroll, especially during challenging times like now. And that's why I'm honored to be endorsed by the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. I'm also honored to be endorsed by the Minnesota Farm Bureau. Small businesses, farmers, they trust my experience and the policy proposals I've put forward to make sure that our economy gets back on the right track and that we have a bright future and a lot of opportunities across the state of Minnesota. For me, how you represent the business community is by listening, is by spending time hearing about their concerns, what barriers they have to growth, and how they can work with the state legislature to ensure that there are opportunities for people across the state of all different types of backgrounds. And that's something that's been such a privilege as a part of this campaign, is to talk with business owners from Fergus Falls to Perham and everywhere in between and understand the barriers that they have. And so I look forward to going down and making sure that they have a voice at the state capitol so that they can continue to invest in our communities and provide opportunities for people to live, work and raise a family right here in Otter Tail County.
Thank you, Jordan. Well, this wraps up our question and answer session or section of our Meet the Candidates. And I want to thank you both for really answering some tough questions. And these just go along with the challenges that are being faced by our local business community in the Fergus Falls area. Of course, as the lead advocate and resource for our members, we do work closely with elected officials from both the local level to the state level and at the federal level. And we want to make sure that our members' concerns are being heard. The Chamber is the voice of the business community. And we hope that if you're elected, you will continue to work with us and listen to the Chamber as we represent our members and their challenges. We're going to wrap up our Meet the Candidates with closing comments. You will each have 2 minutes to tell voters, residents, and local businesses why they should vote for you. Since we began our opening statements with Brittney Johnson, we will invite Jordan Rasmusson to go first. Wrap things up on your end, Jordan, with your closing comments.
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to the Chamber again for hosting, and for everyone who's watching, thank you for taking the time to become an informed voter in this important election. Yeah, as I said earlier, I just got married last month to my high school sweetheart. We both grew up here in Otter Tail County and are excited to raise our family here too. 6 generations of my family have done just that right here in Otter Tail County. I know our values and I look forward to fighting for them as your next state representative. I think the choice in this election is clear. Are we going to stand up for our way of life or let Twin Cities Democrats take us down a path of economic stagnation? I will stand up for Otter Tail County values and Greater Minnesota values. The Democrats will raise your taxes, villainize law enforcement, and leave us and our neighbors behind. I know that COVID-19 has been tough on a lot of families and small businesses. The next state representative for this area is going to have to make tough decisions on how to get our economy on track and bridge our current budget deficit. I'm honored to be endorsed by the Chamber by the Minnesota Farm Bureau because small business owners and farmers know that I have the right policies and experience to help grow our economy here in Otter Tail County and across the state. I also know that Minnesotans deserve to feel safe in their communities. That's why I'm honored to be endorsed by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association. I'm backing law enforcement, and that's why they're backing me in this campaign. Our aging loved ones have faced many challenges over this past year, and that's why I'm honored to be endorsed by Care Providers, an association that represents nursing homes and assisted living facilities here in Otter Tail County and across the state. On these and other important issues, education, transportation, agriculture, I'm ready to lead. I'm Jordan Rasmusson, and I'm asking for your vote for state representative. With your support, I'll work to ensure that Otter Tail County and Minnesota remain the land of opportunity that attracted my ancestors 150 years ago.
Well, thank you, Jordan. And Brittney Johnson, we'd like to give you 2 minutes for your closing comments as well.
Great. So yeah, thank you again to Lisa, to you for moderating today, and to the Fergus Falls Chamber of Commerce for hosting, and to my opponent, Jordan, for coming to what may be our last discussion before the election takes place next Tuesday. So yeah, again, this is my second time running. I ran in 2018, I'm running again in 2020. And I have just been really so fortunate to get to know all of the amazing people who live here in my community. I think that there are some really great initiatives that are happening all across the county, from Perham to Pelican Rapids to Battle Lake to Fergus Falls, both private and public. And it's really important to me that whoever goes down to the state legislature is able to elevate those initiatives and help our community in the best way they know how. So that means we need responsive and effective government. We need responsive and effective government to address any emergencies that come up, to address some of the systemic challenges that our communities have been facing, and really to make sure that the government is doing its role of providing infrastructure and making sure that we're protecting our natural resources. So, as your legislator, I can guarantee that Otter Tail County would have a very strong voice in St. Paul. And I was honored to have so much support in 2018, and I would be honored to earn your vote again in 2020. Our campaign motto is working for people from places we love, and we mean every single word of it.
Thank you, Brittney. Appreciate that. And again, thank you both for participating in our Meet the Candidates. And we want to thank Brittney Johnson, the DFL candidate running for State House of Representative, District 8A. And thank you to Jordan Rasmusson, the Republican candidate, also running for the House of Representatives, District 8A. We appreciate your willingness to serve our region, to serve our residents, and to serve our businesses. We want to thank you to all the members of the Fergus Falls Area Chamber of Commerce for supporting the Chamber's mission to serve as the lead advocate and resource in creating partnerships that foster a healthy business climate. We encourage everyone to get out and vote on or before Tuesday, November 3rd. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.